We've all heard the horror. It's Monday morning. Your boss just informed you of a mandate to migrate all workloads to the cloud. What does that even mean? For our event today, Ready, Set, Remodel Infrastructure, we're going to discuss the decisions that are being made in enterprises today. What does an application-driven infrastructure really look like? And I brought some duct tape. I'm ready to patch. But before we get started, I'd like everyone watching live to go to kahoot.it. It's KAHOOT.IT right now. Enter the PIN number 573904. We're going to be doing a trivia contest at the end, and the top 3 winners will be getting a $200, $100, and $50 Amazon gift card. And with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote and panelists. Melanie Posey, the Research Vice President and General Manager for 451 Research's Voice of the Enterprise. I've known Melanie for years and have looked at her research to understand what cloud adoption really looks like. It really cuts through the noise of what you're hearing in the market versus what the real adoption trends look like. Next up is Ariel Jatib from Netapp. Previously, he led design and growth efforts at StackPoint.io, which was acquired by Netapp in 2018. He is a CNCF ambassador and is a veteran of SaaS and design industry, and he is also an advocate for design systems, goal-driven software development, and iterative methodologies. And Ariel, do I see a hammer? Did you bring tools?
I did. I brought hammers. Did somebody bring nails?
So you bring in a hammer, everything's a nail. This is going to be an interesting start. Let me introduce our panelists. First up, Chris Evans, owner and director of Brookend. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Did you happen to bring any tools?
Do you know what, Greg? I did.
Hey, very nice.
I've got my power drill.
Great. Next up is Karen Lopez, Senior Project Manager and Architect at Info Advisors. Oh, look at that. Karen brought the hard hat. Oh, wait. That says CERN on it.
It sure does. Like, that's a big infrastructure project, the biggest one I've ever seen. And it's also remodeled all the time. Actually, their own cloud.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Karen. And next up, Brian Gracely, Senior Director of Product Strategy at Red Hat. And Brian, what did you share with us? How's our remodel going to look like from your end?
Well, Greg, just in case some of the server huggers get a little bit testy, I brought a blowtorch in case we got to burn it all down.
Burn it all down. I want to see it. Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Let's kick off with our keynote presenter, Melanie Posey. And Melanie, did you bring any tools?
All right, I'm here today to set the stage for the discussion we're going to have. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how 451 Research is thinking about IT transformation and exactly how to achieve the goal of application-driven infrastructure. So in keeping with the remodeling home improvement theme, when you're going about upgrading your infrastructure for increasingly IT-dependent digital business, you can do a total tear down and start all over again. You can keep the foundation, but do a gut renovation. You can revamp the plumbing and the electricity. You can make the place more livable with improvements like a new kitchen or a man cave or a she shed, or you can just basically call your realtor and look for a new place to live. So revamping your company's IT infrastructure is a pretty daunting task. And like your home, it represents a lot of sunk investment, and there's a lot of technical debt involved as well. And our research at 451 is showing that on-prem infrastructure is still a primary workload environment, but the shift is on, with cloud being the venue of choice over the next few years. And so when we talk about cloud, that's a lot of different things. We talk about SaaS and infrastructure as a service and hosted private cloud. So the upshot is that cloud, IT is moving off premises and to the cloud. Also, one way of looking at it is to the cloud, to various different types of clouds. But what about all of those legacy applications that are running mission critical business processes and data that are in non-cloud on-premises environments today. How are these being handled amidst the big shift to cloud? So going back to the metaphor of different approaches to home improvement, there are also 5 different approaches to infrastructure transformation. So the first 2 are basically the IT equivalent of a teardown. So that would be lift and shift, taking your old applications and putting them in a new environment, the cloud. So old wine in new bottles. Or the repurchase and shift approach, where you just replace the applications that are running on-prem with SaaS equivalents. So we see about 10% of folks doing that lift and shift process today, and this is down a lot from previous years, which tells us that all the low-hanging fruit has pretty much been picked, and companies are shifting their focus to more complex applications that can't simply be lifted and shifted, or SaaSified or SaaSinated, if you want to look at it that way. Repatriation, like that used to be a thing, right? Not because cloud is an awful, terrible place to put your applications, but because a lot of applications weren't suited to cloud. And we've got about 15% of folks jumping ship to SaaS. So you repackage, you repurchase and buy a new version of the thing you were already using. And this is an interesting thing we're seeing here, especially since there are different ways of approaching application modernization, whether you're looking at SAP or whether you're looking at Oracle. And then you've got the whole approach of making the place more livable, which we call modernization in place. So you keep the apps on-prem, but you build more modern application and infrastructure architecture. This is what most people are doing right now. And this is kind of an infrastructure-centric approach, but the idea is to lay the groundwork for a more thorough application overhaul via cloud, native frameworks, tools, and DevOps. Then you've got the IT equivalent of a gut renovation, which is refactor and shift. And we're seeing a lot of folks do this as well, where they re-architect the application. So they start with the application and then move the infrastructure to a new environment later on. And then there's the 5th option. You do nothing with the infrastructure or the application infrastructure, and you just walk away. So this is kind of the home improvement equivalent of urban blight. So what do you think about when you're deciding where to put your mission critical legacy applications? First thing is security and cost. That's what everybody always talks about. But we're getting a little bit more sophisticated in the market now. So when you're looking for your next application execution venue, other factors are coming to the fore as well. Platform reliability, application performance, and also a lot of the things having to do with compliance that you do have to worry about as you remodel your infrastructure and get ready for an application-driven infrastructure. So with that, I will pass it over to Ariel and get his views on what he's seeing in the market and how organizations are going about this push towards application-driven infrastructure.
Thank you for participating in this call. Happy to be here with you. I want to dig a little bit into some of the things that you highlighted and that I found really interesting in the research. One is this overarching trend into cloud. But I think it's good to define what we mean by cloud, because when I think of cloud, I think of an architecture. And for a long time, that's meant a destination. And I think one of the things I saw in the research was this overwhelming trend towards cloud as an architecture, and even this notion of a digital estate and looking holistically at kind of the IT footprint is fascinating. Can you kind of speak a little bit to that and maybe a little bit more in the details, what you were finding in the research? And am I accurate in thinking that this transition is now in full roar?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing we're increasingly seeing is that cloud is not a destination. Cloud is the journey. And cloud is not a thing. Cloud is a way you do things. So to your point, Ariel, about an architecture, that's exactly what it is. And a lot of what cloud involves is not just technology, but also a plan for business transformation. And as business becomes more and more digital, and as disruptive shocks happen in the economy, you need an infrastructure that's flexible and agile enough to drive your applications out to the market and run your business.
Great. And something else that really struck me was this mention of SAP and Oracle and looking at the research, and even within that kind of space, if we will, the ERP systems, the different approaches that those solutions and the ways that they've matured. Can you speak a little bit as to that a little bit, and some things that folks might want to consider in looking at migrating those workloads?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one area, the most mission critical of mission critical applications is going to be your ERP system, right? And we're seeing a lot of different approaches to migration and modernization there. On the Oracle side of things, we're seeing a lot of jump ship to SaaS. Obviously, because Oracle has a strategy in place that is enabling that shift to consuming the software from the cloud. With SAP, we're seeing a broader range of approaches being taken, and a lot of them being partner driven. So I think the upshot here is when you're thinking about modernizing your mission critical legacy applications, what you have to keep in mind is how the ISV is guiding that journey for customers, and also take a look at what your business needs in terms of where that application needs to be and how flexible it needs to be in terms of moving it around to serve different constituencies or different business use cases.
Okay, yeah. I think that's a good opportunity to segue a little bit into one of the products that we feel really addresses this digital transformation initiatives within organizations, and that's Azure Netapp Files, which is a first-party service on Azure, and it provides for the flexibility that I think as you're looking to transition to these these different workloads can account for things like multiple protocols, the compliance, which is really important to these key critical workloads like you meant, and things like performance steering. Looking at SAP as an example, there's different parts of the code base that have or features that have different kind of requirements, and using something like Azure Netapp Files provides for the ability to automatically not only consume a manage ONTAP solution that is available, again, as a first-party service through Azure, but then also scale that dynamically to meet the needs of those workloads, so that as you rehost that application, you have some flexibility that also could lead to some cost savings. And that's the end of the spiel part. If you want to learn more about that, I recommend you go to ntap.com/app-driven, and there'll be a link, and you can actually go and talk to some of our remodeling folks that can kind of aid you in thinking about this transition over to a more cloudy architectures, if you will. Part of the reason that I'm really fascinated and interested in this journey is not only was my last startup kind of focused on the transformation. We were one of the first two companies born kind of in the age of Kubernetes. We came into being just before the CNCF existed, and we actually helped Google socialize Kubernetes. So seeing a lot of organizations that were coming to us interested in this technology, and if there was a startup, they were definitely starting with containers. Because looking back at my previous startup experience in the mid-2000s, we did things like build our own recurring payment system because that didn't exist. And so I think that brings us to this like two key vectors that I want to focus on. One is ecosystem, right? What does the landscape evolving look like, and how should you be looking at that space? It's almost like there's new appliances, there's new, intelligent IoT appliances or devices available to kind of enhance your home. And so what does that look like? Where should I place my bets? And then the other one is on the planning and the process part of it. So in looking at ecosystems, one of the folks that I'd like to highlight is Simon Wardley. And he thinks about mapping technology and going back to the home kind of metaphor, thinking more broadly around electricity and the transition that occurred from using oil and as a form of fuel, even for in-home consumption, to electricity and all the appliances or the apps that grew up around that. An early example is the light bulb was the original, but now electricity powers everything in our homes, it feels like. And so what Wardley does is he looks across a couple of vectors. He looks across, is something a commodity? Electricity is a commodity, or is something kind of still early and bespoke? And when we think about electricity, we consume it. We don't care if it comes from ground power, or a generator, or panels on your ceiling. It just exists. And that is kind of the trajectory that we have around computing and that cloud architectures provide. Inherent in them, long term, not necessarily today, is the idea of portability and that I am just consuming these resources to do it. And then there's the invisible and the visible kind of vector. And so I highly recommend you kind of think about the ecosystems. In that first startup, again, we leaned on, we had to build our own recurring payment system, but for the second one, we just used Stripe. And again, that speaks to ecosystems. What services can I consume from my environment that kind of extend functionality? And there's a lot of stuff there, things like Twilio, different things that kind of enhance the experience of users and also enable developers, things from platforms like Red Hat, OpenShift, or even, the various things like API facades. Apogee from Google comes to mind that provides for more sharing of information, right? In Netapp, we also talk about data fabric, but the abstractions have shifted from in 15 years to today. And so evolving your infrastructure while also kind of looking ahead is really critical. So the analysis part of it is key. The other component of it is the planning. So I've taken my inventory, and to Melanie's point about a framework, I love the 5 R's. Microsoft has written a bunch around the 5 R's, and there's really good stuff. I suggest you go there and read it, or ping me on Twitter. I'll send you a link. But yeah, it's the easiest way for me to remember the 5 kind of buckets, if you will, that Melanie spoke about earlier. And we have rehost, refactor, re-architect, rebuild, and replace. So the rehost is that old wine, new bottles kind of approach, right? Lift and shift approach. The refactor can be a variety. I'm stripping off a service and moving it over. The re-architect is I'm going to go full on like containers as an example. And then the rebuild and replace are like, again, am I going to replace it? Is this service critical to my business enough that I need to manage it? Looking at our own IT team here internally, they've gone through that exercise. They have a 3 to 5 year kind of horizon for transitioning the platform. And one statistic that I find super compelling from them is that 70% of the applications currently under management will be consumed in that time at the end of that window via some type of SaaS solution. Again, it's kind of like it's a journey, as you illustrated earlier. And at this point, Greg, I'd love to bring in the rest of the group to talk about some of the more nuanced aspects of this journey that folks should consider.
Absolutely. I think this is a great time to bring in our community roundtable with Karen, Chris, and Brian. And Karen, I'll start off with you. I don't want to pick on you, but you mentioned CERN, so I'm going to call you out on it. You've seen some really big infrastructures. You've seen these migrations. You've seen these replatforming. You've seen the challenges of taking these mission critical applications and having to re-architect the infrastructure for those applications. What are some of your reflections of what that looks like?
Oh, that's a great question. I have a couple of hours to answer that, right? So like I'm an architect at heart. So like every architecture decision comes down to cost, benefit, and risk. And one of the challenges that teams have is each of those things, costs and benefits and risks, are different in the cloud. That doesn't make them better or worse. They're just different. So the questions that come up, besides the fact that you're maybe learning new technologies and new architectures and new patterns for architectures, is how does this change the ecosystem around your applications that you may be migrating to the cloud? So for instance, if you're going from on-premises hosted application like Oracle or any of these things, and then you're transitioning to a SaaS-based offering, all your access to the data is probably going to be via APIs and no longer via direct connections to databases, which for a data person like me, oh my gosh, now I'm limited. I may be limited to the APIs, the performance may be different. And then the other costing questions are, we're not used to, as a data architect, thinking about paying for every bit as it moves, because we paid all those costs up front with big upfront investment on capital and data centers and licenses. And now, as we move data around, does that mean all of our analytics services need to move to the cloud in order to better make use of the costing formula? Like, really, these migrations end up opening a bunch of really interesting questions. But to draw it back to the CERN thing, some of the issues you have to deal with in cloud are pure physics. Like, how long does it take for these bits of data to move from this place to another place? Or perhaps now the data is even closer because we had distributed data. So all of these, like as an architect, these are really exciting questions I have.
They are, and just real quick, I want to just do another quick plug. If you go to netapp.com/appdriven, a great research brief that Melanie has put together is available there for you to download. There's also more information on ANF, and as Ariel mentioned, talking to one of our remodelers that can help you walk through what that might look like and what the process is. And Brian, I'm gonna call you out now. You brought the blowtorch, the server huggers. This is not an easy equation for them. And I know, particularly from a Red Hat perspective, these are things you guys are particularly passionate about. And I know you are from a Kubernetes perspective. Through that lens, what does this look like?
Well, I think the first question that you really need to ask if somebody says we're going to the cloud, it's what's the business driver? Is the business driver, and if we made it real simple, are we doing it because we need to save cost, right? There's a distinct business need to save cost, and there's ways you can do that. Or is it that we need to either build applications differently, or we need to build applications that we can update faster? And so I think, if you start from that perspective, a lot of times it's going to dictate some of where do you focus, which people are the best to drive that, right? Which of the 5 R's, as Ariel talked about, are going to make the most sense. But, I always tend to sort of start that conversation with, that's fine. You want to go to the cloud, or you think that's the right thing, but what's driving it? Is it cost? Is it speed? Or is it something else?
Absolutely. Chris, and I know you've been intimate with this for a long time, probably longer than either of us want to admit to. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But you've seen, I know you have, some of the enterprises you've worked with, you've seen migrations go bad, and you've seen some of the challenges. What are some of the kind of the guide rails that you look at as you're approaching these, and assuming that you've established the right business outcomes that you're driving toward? Now it's about technical execution.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some of them already. So the whole idea that you would think to go to the cloud when you don't really know why you're going to the cloud. I think, I've seen companies do that and then think, oh, it'll be fine because, it'll simplify things. The cost will be more practical. And then they get there and there are all these things that come along that they never thought about. So, for example, I had one client who had to throw away all of their historical data because they'd kept all of this data in a SharePoint environment, which at that point, when they did the migration, was all lost. Now, they hadn't really thought about what that implication was, but that was pretty significant for them because it meant they couldn't go back and look at that historical data as part of their business process. And I think they really regretted making that sort of decision. So I think when you're looking at it, you really do need to be thinking, well, like Brian said, what is it I'm actually moving for? what am I going to get out of this and what am I saving? And I always think it comes down to cost and agility when you're looking at this. You're either doing it to do cost saving, or you're trying to give something back to the business, because let's face it, we're all in IT because of the business. We're trying to give something back to the business that makes them work better, faster, stronger, which, to use the $6 million man analogy, it's all about being better, faster, stronger. It's all about improving that agility, which is obviously a word we use today all the time. And I always look at it from that perspective.
It's interesting, Melanie, and I referenced the research paper that is available on netapp.com/appdriven, because first of all, and I've said this many times to many different audiences, I absolutely love the quality of 451 research. This is to find information at scale of what adoption trends look like. I don't think you get better than 451 research. And a lot of the analyst firms cover these things, but you guys actually kind of peel back the covers, show the numbers, the size of organizations you're working with. So I can't rave enough about it. It is really good, transparent information. Encourage everybody to download the brief on netapp.com/appdriven. But Melanie, I'm curious, in your research, any horror stories that you've seen of either from a strategic business perspective or a technical execution perspective where something hasn't been thought out as they're looking to improve their applications or identify the right platform for those applications?
Oh yeah, definitely. There are a lot of things that people don't think about, and then a problem arises, and then it's a really big problem. Like, one of the main things we've seen is people who just lift and shift applications to a cloud environment, and they haven't re-architected them. And it's not so much that the application doesn't work, it's more that moving it to the cloud doesn't really give you any real benefit. And the benefit of the cloud is flexibility, agility, and all of that. And if you take a monolithic end-tier application, move it to a cloud environment, all you've done is moved it to a different environment, and that's pretty much it. And in other cases, what we found is the problem is the performance of the application. And I mentioned before about platform reliability and application performance, and how increasingly those are being looked at by enterprises as key factors that determine which IT environment works best for any particular application. So our advice is to take an application-centric approach to this whole thing. Look at what the application requirements are and what that application does for your business, and then you can look at the security and the cost factors and all the rest of it. But business has to drive this whole thing.
I just want to interject real quick. We're in a few minutes, we're going to be jumping into the trivia contest. We've got some great prizes there. Go to kahoot.it, KAHOOT.it. The PIN number, once you get there, 573904. I guarantee you this is going to be a lot of fun. Got some great prizes here as well. And Ariel, you have a very unique background amongst everybody on this panel with the startups that you've been a part of, and that journey, the multiple journeys that you've been on. So a lot of this conversation is talked about like existing enterprises and how they're managing these changes and what we call digital transformation. I'm not a big fan of the word, but we talk about digital transformation. From a startup sense, it's a little bit different because you're just building your data. And so the platform decisions you're making as a startup are a little bit different. And any reflections that you have there, because I know you've got a very interesting background with having to navigate these decisions, but it is a little bit different from than an enterprise look at this.
Thinking about transformation, I think we've focused on the technology, but the people in the process, right? Let's unfold that, or let's unbundle that term digital transformation. And usually there's three vectors: the people, the process, and the technology. And you need to consider those, because you could have the solution, doesn't mean that anybody is going to adopt it, as folks in startups will know well. To everybody's point about some agility, those 5 R's about rationalizing the workflows. Let me preface it by saying in my last 2 years now going on Netapp, I've spent a lot of time with enterprises. And one of my focus areas was looking for partners who had developed what they ended up calling digital transformation practices within the organization. And a good practice we saw there leading to success was taking that inventory, identifying 10 applications to move over in order to kind of get some experience around what that migration looks like before kind of committing or dedicating a bunch of cycles to everything that they hold in their digital estate.
Can I just, Greg, can I just interrupt there slightly, because I just want to follow up on that area and ask you the question about the level of detail you find that people need to go into in that situation. So if you were moving between infrastructure and your own data center, that wouldn't be too bad. But when you're moving to a cloud environment or a SaaS environment, you're very much restricted to the parameters of that environment in terms of how you adopt it. So, for instance, they may offer certain services, they may offer certain performance levels, etc. And also the costs can be driven, by how you use that service. So, how deep do you expect customers to go in terms of finding out the information about their application?
Right. So at a minimum, you got to assess the dependencies. And I think I'd love to hear a little bit more from Melanie on this, from the research, as to what has led to success. What we found is two key things come to mind. One is an assessment of the dependencies of the solution, right? Like how complex is this moving it over? And then if we're talking about like VM style workloads, what is kind of the delta when I'm getting a lot of load on an application? As a sense, have I right-sized my my VM in the cloud, which has a real cost, to Karen's point earlier, that I'm not necessarily accustomed to considering, so that I'm not sacrificing performance, but at the same time, I'm achieving some cost efficiencies. And to throw something Brian's way also, I think one of the exciting things that we see is this kind of blending of container and VM environments through projects like KubeVirt coming out of Red Hat that kind of provide a little bit more of a mesh or a fabric across your digital estate. And there's different ways that you can do that, right? But that ways to provide that interconnectivity, if you will.
Right. And Karen, I saw you nodding and laughing when I mentioned Clouderati. I'm going to presume you understood the context of my comment and some of the groupthink that you see in the industry. But as you mentioned with CERN and others, you've seen some pretty big environments. And so I'm going to guess you have a strong opinion about this, or at least some context to this.
Well, first of all, I love those types of terms because, we're the era of social media, and those just fit really well in social media. But to pick up on Brian's thing, like, it's one of the big things about very large systems is they are a big project to migrate. I mean, there's just and it's a project high risk for migrating to even a new data center or new technology. And the cloud doesn't change anything of that. One of the things, though, that I love about people who are cloud fans like I am, like we were talking the other day, Greg, I've been in this industry for 35 years. I've been of innovation and changes and attitudes. I mean, I remember when going to a data center was seen as just, why would I let anyone else manage my servers? And so the cloud, and also to go back to the beginning, where I think cloud is an architecture, not a place. And those are the things that excite me: the burstability, the scalability, the web scale, all of those things. But the point I wanted to make is one of the things that the cloud has brought to us is the ability for teams that live in shops where they're always about 5 years behind on upgrades and all those things. The barrier to entry to trying a new technology when you're already in the cloud is basically, can I use $1,000 to do a quick proof of concept? If you wanted to try a new massively distributed data system, you needed a big budget, you needed lots of new hardware, it involved all of IT. Now I could go try to spin up some Hadoop clusters for very cheaply to try to figure out what is different. So the barrier to entry that cloud does away with from our traditional way of looking at IT and infrastructure has been really beneficial. Not everyone is a bleeding edge technology team. We need to help these people where they don't have to, in a SaaS system, you don't pay for upgrades, you don't schedule them. They happen.
They just happen, and it's there, and it's convenient, and you don't have to manage it, which is, obviously all the benefits there. And Chris, as we wrap up this roundtable, we're heading into this trivia contest, and I got to caution you, Chris. I know you love trivia.
I do like it.
You are not allowed to participate in this because
I'm very disappointed. I've got my proxies in another room who are going to do it on my behalf.
Is that it? It's already being gamed. Well, let's just remind people real quick before we transition over to the game. Go to kahoot.it, KAHOOT.it, pin number 573904. Get there now because we're going to start with trivia. And Ariel, I'm going to turn it over to you as you're going to guide and shepherd us through this process.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to the panelists. Yes. Now here are the great names. Tropical Hen, Kind Dragon,
Mighty Ferret,
Chicken, Quick Hair,
Egret,
Glowing Rhino. We got 19 players. So again, go to kahoot.it, KAHOOT.it, and enter the code 573904, and we'll get started with in just a minute. Thank you for joining Melodic Jaguar.
Well, Glad Lark. I love these names, and this Kahoot is the one that does these names, so this is pretty cool. It's pretty funny.
Name randomizer, right? Like this is a fun one.
I didn't know we had so many devices in our house that we could log on from. 21 devices apparently we have.
Chris.
By the way, as a reminder, the prize is, Greg, what is it? It's $200 for first place.
That's right, $200 Amazon gift card for first place, $100 for second place, and $50 for third. Those are U.S. dollars, but we'll convert it to whatever geography and country that you're in and do that locally. So don't think you have to be U.S. based to do this. Everybody's welcome. And as part of the registration process, you had to enter in your email. We'll follow up with you to that email once this wraps up to make sure we get those prizes to you. So are we ready? Are we ready to get started, Ariel?
Let's do this. All right, let me move this over here so I see it. All right. 3, 2, 1. I love this UI also. It's so playful.
And you know these guys.
I did. I met these guys. I spent some time in EdTech, and I met them, and they're great folks based out of the UK, but Scandinavian team. All right. First question. Where is the question?
They already had it on there. Lift and shift is like?
Lift and shift. Is it like an old car and a new transmission? Old wine and new bottles? Coffee beans and espresso? Or fresh hops and great beer?
Oh, boy.
I think somebody said this one already. I think it's already been mentioned.
Yeah. I know what I'd like. I don't know. It's Thursday. It might be a little early, but I'm on KubeCon schedule right now. Fresh hop,
coffee beans and espresso. Wasn't that our last ready set with Dave Asprey?
Yeah. It was. It does map back to that one. In case you missed it. We had it's on YouTube, so you could go watch it. But we had Dave Asprey, who is the founder and a former technologist, who started.
Look at this!
Yeah. All right.
Old wine, new bottles.
People really went for the car metaphor. I'm surprised. Yeah.
Very nice.
Cool. All right.
And just so everybody has somebody to blame, Ariel's the one that came up with all these questions.
Yeah. It was in fully transparent. It was like part of the talk, and I had to like go back. I was like, yes, I got to say that or.
All right, let's keep moving here.
Next. All right. Wise cat. Wise cat.
Wise cat. Yeah.
Is that your house, Chris?
And no.
Yeah, that looks like us. Yeah, I'm fairly sure that's us.
Shining. Let's see. Next question, please. All right.
Ooh.
In thinking about digital transformation, consider culture and dependencies, security, people, process, and technology, the Clouderati.
The Clouderati. Of course. The Clouderati will always give us the answers we're looking for,
That's
right?
right. We must praise at the altar.
So this is a one answer question. You can only pick one of them.
Yes.
There's no multiple choice.
This
So
is
it's-
one. Yep.
Oh,
They
it's
all
tricky.
these will have. There can be only one
Okay.
with all these. They are. Yeah. Noted, Chris. Yes. This is in truth. You should consider all these.
Chris, if you had to pick one, which one would it be?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's putting me on the spot. I'd probably go for all of them in one form or another.
Yeah.
No, I know which one I'd go for, but it might give it away to people. So
I know.
I don't
Yeah.
No,
wanna
that's
say
okay.
it
We
out
only
loud.
got 5 seconds left. I want you to go on the
Well,
record before we see the answer.
Got to be orange. It's got to be orange. People, process, and
I'm
technology.
gonna go blue. Blue with you.
Oh, look at that, Chris.
Oh,
Great.
wow. I am tricking folks. That is.
See, that's the second question. Second one where you've actually said
see.
the answer. If you're paying attention to the presentation, the
That's
answer's there.
right.
All right, let's see who's in the lead.
Wise Cat, did you hold up? Yes.
Oh!
Ah,
Agile Deer's moving up.
Wise Cat, a plant. Agile Deer, gentle line. Let's go on to the next question. How many applications should you add to your migration backlog? All of
This
them?
was loaded.
Obviously.
20 to 30%?
All of them.
100? Or 10?
Okay, I just object to these answers.
Okay. Please expand.
They
Do we
need
get
to
a
be
certification at the end of this? Do we get certified if we get them all right?
Yeah, how about as many as you want because it's a free country.
Yeah.
No, it's what's your credit card limit?
Oh, you could hurt
That's right.
yourself if you take them all. That's my hint.
I
I think
seen-
it's about being agile.
I've seen
Um,
some certification exams that are easier than this.
Yeah, so sorry, man.
They may not be
this was
valuable, but I've
yesterday.
seen them.
Yeah, I did it. I want to share something funny. The first startup, as we were talking, provisioning servers. That was on just like traditional infrastructure. And
Ariel, look at the answers here. 10.
Ooh,
14. Dang.
Yeah.
These are maybe too tough. Let's
Wow.
see. The Wise
You
Cat
said,
hold
you,
up.
said, you said it again, though. You said it. You said it in the presentation.
Well, that's why it's a trivia contest.
That's right.
Yeah.
Paying attention. Next.
Wise cat.
Wise Cat is Wise Cat's gonna have to. How many R's in the cloud rationalization process? And I guess the typo.
Oh, I remember this one. Again, if you paid attention to the R's, this really isn't a knowledge quiz. This is just how carefully did you pay attention to the presentation. I like it.
That's what
Yeah, that's good.
it
The
is.
former educator, by the way, so it was like I was tortured by it.
Yeah, but you put that typo in at the top, though.
I did. Like I said, this was yesterday with Tim being like, "Come on, man." I'm like, almost.
I have a qualifying question here. Brian, does Red Hat qualify as one of the R's?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Although, we're just a small part of a bigger I now, so probably not.
Yeah. Also, there are more R's.
Yeah. There are, yes, there's a variety of models, 6 R's and
7.
It's like a pirate joke.
Oh no,
Ah.
5.
Wait, what?
what? Oh,
I think we
it
got
should
that
be
one mixed
5.
up
I'm
there.
sorry, 13. Yeah. I'm not sure that was.
We'll fix the scores on the back and the right answer on that. is-
All right, let's see.
But refactor has 2 R's.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Spell check did not work.
Oh,
Wow.
new leader.
Wow.
Leader in the clubhouse.
All right, so we're going to have to
Tropical
revise these scores post-event
Yeah.
because the wrong answer was in there.
Sorry, Wise Cat.
All right, let's move ahead.
Which Azure storage offering is certified for SAP HANA workloads? This should be an easy one, kind of a loaded one. Azure NetApp Files, Azure Files, Azure Disk.
I'm
S3.
sure it's
That's what
S3.
comes
It's
along on this.
S3.
It's the green one. It's the green one for sure.
Gotta be S3, isn't it?
They don't even get a
Don't
company
believe me.
name next to it either.
It's like
That was Ron's
like Madonna
building,
or
right?
Prince. It only needs
Single name.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So does this platform randomize things if you use them again, so that if you've chosen like it's always going to be the green, it will randomize it for you, so that can't happen?
I'm unclear on it. I haven't actually looked at the platform. The team here has been using it. I haven't looked at the back end of it in some time. But yeah, it's an interesting business model. They have.
There we go.
Wow.
Nice.
Yay.
I hopefully nobody got that wrong, but thank you for everybody for participating out. We will on the back end sort out the results and the winners, because the winners as they're reflected here may not reflect the actual winner because of the confusion with one of the questions there. So look forward to getting an email follow-up from us, and we will adjust the scores accordingly. So if we can go to the wrap-up. I want to thank first of all, our keynote presenter, Melanie. Absolutely fantastic, Melanie. And again, I can't rave enough about 451 research and just the quality of the research. I encourage everybody to take a look at that. If you go to netapp.com/appdriven, you can get a brief for Melanie's research that she referenced here in her presentation today. Ariel, as always, and thank you for being a part of this. And so for other folks know, Ariel's very active in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, CNCF. He's in pre-COVID days was notorious for the New York City meetups that were going on, and you're a regular active participant in the CNCF virtual events. So look for Ariel there. Karen, how can people follow you online while we're having this conversations and want to extend the conversation?
I'm Data Chick on Twitter, and I blog at datamodel.com, and I tweet a lot about data and space.
She does. And I'll just say this as a side note, because when we were doing some prep for this, I had a side conversation with Karen. I was just blown away. And I tweeted about that. Karen's background and her experience could be a podcast series by itself. I'm so thoroughly impressed. And what you get on Twitter is just a tip of the iceberg of what Karen's all about. So I would encourage everybody to follow and engage with her. Chris, how can people follow you online and get tidbits of your wisdom?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a problem because I've got a relatively common name, so lots of people keep stealing the Twitter handle that I wanted to get a hold of, so I never got it. So I've got Chris M. Evans on Twitter, and you can find me at architecting.it, where I blog about twice a week.
Do people confuse you for Captain America?
Yeah, it's great. I think half the followers I have think I'm somebody else. So, and then they sort of follow me for about like a week, and then they obviously drop off and go, "Oh no, it wasn't him." Oh well, but you know, it's worth it in the short term.
And that's great. And Brian, you're all over the industry. You're presenting at industry events, Red Hat events, and other things. How can people follow you online?
Probably easiest way is at B Gracely. So first initial, last name at Twitter. Or once a week, maybe stop by and listen to the Cloudcast podcast. We do that once a week on Wednesdays.
Yep, it's still you and Aaron Delp, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a fantastic podcast. I've had the good fortune of being on that before, and it's really great. Brian they've done a great job of getting a diverse base of guests that kind of cover the cloud universe on that. So one last quick plug, go to netapp.com/appdriven. You can get Melanie's brief, the analyst brief that she's written. There's also an opportunity for you to connect with one of our NetApp architects to get a little deeper into that application-driven infrastructure journey that you're on. And with that, I want to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for the participation, and we'll look forward to everybody. Quick plug, next month, we're going to be doing Ready, Set, Transform, and we're going to be talking SAP. So look forward to that on September 24th next month. Thanks.
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 Bye.